So, Karl Simons, welcome to the Form Guide. This is our LinkedIn Live and podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Rob. Good to be here.
Really good to have you. So, what do you reckon, Phil Collins? Were you a fan? Were you a Phil fan?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in that era, in the 80s and in the 90s, wasn't it? But generally, the 80s, I did like all Phil's, and he started as a drummer, didn't he? So, and then moved into the singing side. But yeah, that was a nice song, actually. It did cast me back to the 80s as a kid, growing up in school. I was in my teenage years then. So yeah, that was good fun. Definitely.
Yeah, I remember that No Jacket Required album. It was one of the first LPs that I ever owned. So that always stuck with me. So Karl, welcome. You are Karl Simons OBE, and congratulations on the OBE. And we're going to talk about that. You are
Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Very welcome. Really good to see. You are Chief Health, Safety and Security Officer for Thames Water, and you're a really well-known and prolific campaigner on helping improve workplaces from a mental health and well-being point of view. And we're going to get into that. So, really good to have a chat with you. And we had a good chat on your radio show as well not too long ago, didn't we?
Oh yeah, on Men's radio station. That was good fun. I've been doing that for over a year now, and it's fabulous getting people like yourself on, Rob, active campaigners, and from CEOs in major organizations. That's always been a sort of since starting it, I guess it's been I've developed as a radio presenter more than anything, because I do love listening. I think it's one of my great qualities. I think the ability to be able to listen, but to deeply listen is slightly different, because a lot of people, whilst listening, have thoughts going through their head. They can't wait to speak. But I actually enjoy the silence of just listening to somebody talking. And when you're in a podcast radio show like that style environment, it's sort of, you've got to be able to listen, because as the whole point of getting on guests is you can hear their stories.
Yeah.
I can see you keeping your mouth shut, all those rapid thoughts running through your head there and saying, right, okay, let Karl talk.
No, it's interesting though, and the art of listening is a bit of a forgotten one. And what that sparked off with me was the whole Clubhouse phenomenon. I don't know if you've been onto Clubhouse at all. Have you checked it out?
No, I haven't. No.
So Clubhouse, it's an audio only platform, and you go on there. So you're literally on your phone. So there's no visuals. So it's a bit like live podcasting. And I've done a few gigs on there, not promoted any, but it feels like everybody's trying to talk, and it doesn't quite have the intimacy of the podcast and maybe it will get there, but I think it's a bit different with that live thing where you've got panels of people and everyone's got a kind of bit to say. It's a bit strange, but a lot of people are using it. So I'm going to do a lot of listening. You're going to do a lot of talking, but we're going to start with the question. And that's the question that I'm sure you're expecting me to ask you. And the question I always start with, which is, how are you today? And what's your score out of 10? So I always go first. Mine, as you can see in my background, I'm an 8 out of 10, really good form today. And I think this week, I've been a bit sad over the weekend about my loss of fitness because of long COVID and my inability to exercise. But then this week, I've sort of come out of that low period with just a sense of getting things ticked off, feeling really productive this week with some exciting work things happening. But how about you, Karl? What's your score today?
I would say it's up there, the 8 to 9 out of 10 at the minute. I'm pleased with where I represent Thames Water, as you know, and the organisation's made some real good advancements forward this past year again, which I'll talk some more about as we carry on. Personally, the families, although the kids have adapted really well to working from home, they go back to school next week, so they're really excited. Boris's recent announcement kind of really shifted everybody upwards, in my opinion, in terms of their give everybody a boost. I think the country getting a boost was a really good thing. And also seeing a sort of end in sight, as the vaccination program kind of hopefully cancels out the volume of coronavirus cases, certainly affecting those but most vulnerable. So I guess with the family, doing okay. My wife's great. She's gone to work. She's worked throughout. She's away. The kids are good. And me personally, I'm in a good space right now. Although my arm is sore from the vaccination, right enough. That's, but it's a good sore, So I kind of, I've spoke to so many people, obviously now that have had the vaccination, and it's a great boost when it comes.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, we're sort of. And when did you have yours, Karl?
Last Saturday. I volunteer. I'm a vaccinator down in Bournemouth and Southampton. So any vials at the end of the day that are spare usually line up. What happens is, Rob, all the volunteers are exposed to an inherently escalated level of slight risk, because there's so many people coming through, and you're doing the cleaning, and some of us are vaccinated who are qualified. And so what happens is everybody's name goes into, because it's usually to run these centres, you need people, what they call patient advocates for those coming through the door. You need the vaccinating team, and then you need the patient caring team for the aftercare service, right? Because people like to sit around and make sure nothing's going to happen. And so roughly you're talking about 20 to 30 volunteers in any centre of size, so everybody's name goes in on the list, and then they line people, and then it's all about who's the oldest. Gets a vaccination first, and I'm not that old, believe it or not. So I've always been pretty much down the list. But last Saturday I was kind of shuffled in and said, we've got because what happens is the vials for the AstraZeneca, I'm not sure how much you know, but they come in 9, generally 8 to 10. So you get about 9 syringes out of a vial, So obviously they don't want to, once one's open, they want to use up the syringes for that. So generally the people, which I think is a good thing, I was fortunate enough to get the vaccine on Saturday.
Yeah, brilliant. And good for you. And thank you for the volunteering. It's an important job. I was lucky enough to be invited quite early to get one, maybe because I've got a few underlying health conditions, or possibly even because of my bipolar disorder, actually. But I was really struck by the carnival atmosphere in the vaccination centre, from the people in the queue to the people greeting to everybody. It just felt like this sense of hope going on, which is what it is, right? We see that light at the end of the tunnel, and it's definitely not a bloke holding a torch, right? I
know, and it's a shame because it would have been good to have people at the front saying free hugs, but unfortunately we're not allowed to do that still yet, Rob.
We're not, Karl. So we should pick up on. We should see right away. We're going off on tangents, which is brilliant. So my script is out of the window. But so the free hugs. Tell me about the free hugs idea that we discussed this on your radio show.
All right. So I remember years ago, I think somewhere in the order of about 7 or 8 years ago, I was down in Brighton, and I was walking through with my family through the centre. And there were these 2 young girls, and they were dressed classically like the 60s style hippie era. And one of them was holding a placard that said free hugs. So, obviously I kind of went over and spoke to them and got a hug. And I tell you what, it was fabulous. And we couldn't stop laughing about it all day, my wife and I, and the kids were getting hugs too. And I thought, isn't that brilliant? What a thing to do in the middle of a high street
Amazing. And I think we're missing that, aren't we? It's that physical contact, the oxytocin, the hormone that we get from an actual hug. I'm a big hugger. I know you are too. So we spoke about the idea that the next major wellbeing mental health conference that is a big physical event, whether it's Mad World or This Can Happen or Chris Cummings, if you're watching on your events, that you and I just have a little stand in the entranceway, free hugs, and as the delegates arrive, me and you are there to welcome the delegates with a hug. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm up for it. We'll have to wear dark clothing because obviously, we're hugging a lot of females with the makeup on. I don't want to wear a white shirt on that day, or at least give advance warning to your missus that You know, you're going to be hugging a lot of people today.
Well, absolutely, yeah, we can do that. So you've heard it's this sort of live TV, this, Karl. We've made a commitment. So conference organisers, we are there for free hugs, right? So looking at that, sort of, you know, you're an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I want this. We got some good comments on the chat. Lynn would like a hug. So yes, Lynn, you are there. You've got one. There's this concept of a perfect 10-day, and for me it's a little bit of an ideal. It might happen if all the stars are in alignment and everything is going well, but what would a perfect 10 out of 10 form day look like for you, Karl?
So professionally, I'm very fortunate enough to have them every day within Thames Water, and now it's become the isolated occurrences where we don't hit it. So what I mean by that is we measure something in the company called perfect days, and it means that there's been no physical or psychological health interventions. So we have mental health first aiders, we have physical first aiders across the company, and that results, any harm results in an intervention by them. And a perfect day for me, so I know last month we had 15 of those. So this isn't about actual injury or illness occurring. This is much before that, where somebody has become either unwell from a work-induced illness, high levels of stress, anxiety caused by work, or plasters required from an injury perspective. So any mental or physical first aid intervention in the workplace. And when that happens every day, see, this is the thing, when you're setting goals and targets in organizations, you know, you may have long-term aspirations around benchmarking, about where you want to be, but really putting the people to work safely and sending them home safe and well at night is the holy grail in my world. And every day that goes by where that happens, that's a perfect day for me. On a personal perspective, you know, just being able to tuck my kids in at night, you know, that for me, I'm very much a family man, and you know, I draw strength from the family to deal with the ups and downs of modern life, as many of us do, and you know, any disruption, you know, people talk about work-life balance, Rob, and I always say to my team that, you know, there's going to be moments throughout your career and your life where, you know, something may go wrong at home, bereavement, divorce, some unsettling, no matter what it is, moving house even, you know, some unsettling disruption that can drop the negativity in that personal life. And likewise, there could be something in the workplace, you know, from a side of poor leadership, boss management, making redundant, that can drop that side, yeah? But as long as one area is stable, then generally you can get through it and keep your, you know, your shape and generally get through that one that's dropping. Yeah. It's when things go wrong at both, it can become a very dark place very quickly. So if we think about what's happening in a minute and over the past year in society, you know, a lot of people push to work from home, and that's created a lot of stresses in the home life, you know, and that's happened to people naturally. On the flip side, we've had people then who have actually not only had to deal with working from home, but then losing their job as a result of, you know, furlough not being increased, or, you know, organizations struggling. Yeah. And that has caused incredible stresses. And what we're seeing is levels of, you know, mental health within people diminishing quite strongly over the last year. Not for everyone. For some people, the early days of being sent to work from home has been incredibly refreshing, you know, and I recall going out for the early walks with the family in the early last year and thinking there was no cars on the road, and it was like stepping back in time to the 70s, you know, when we used to go out for walks. But so the perfect day for me is everything going well at home and everything ticking along in the workplace.
Yeah, fantastic. And Karl, I love the fact that when I asked you that question, your first thought was the safety of others, and the perfect day in your workplace, which is, you know, a testament to you. we're going to get into some of the stuff that you raised there, and certainly keen to explore a little bit about this pandemic and why it's different to the first one. But we're going to do the quick fire round first, and this is something that you can't prepare for. So, and it's all around, if mental health were a, what would it be? First thing that comes into your head. Okay. So if mental health were an animal, Karl, what would it be?
My default answer would be my dogs, because they're next to me.
Yeah.
But that would be an easy kind of get out, isn't it? You know, the puppy love and the unquestionable response. But I know it's a quick fire round, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, you know what I mean, let's do something different. So maybe a bee.
A bee, the mental health bee. Why a bee, Karl?
Right. Okay. So if you think, when I worked in the Middle East, out on the sites, we used to put a bit of water out next to the canteen, right, on the side. And one of the reasons for that was I had so many bee stings occurring across my sites, that, you mean, and it was always in the canteen areas. And the bees were trying to get at the water, not at the food. They were trying to get at the water, right. Because it was the Middle East and it was hot on sites, and they were fighting with the site guys to be able to get the water. So one of the smart Indian fellas that worked with me on the sites at the time, he said, look, we just need to put water out for the bees. And I kind of said, really? And he said, yeah, we'll try it. So we did that across all the sites, and the bees would come because they have to feed the hive, right? Which is like their family. And that's what I mean. If they can't do that, they get all stressed, right? And bees have poor mental health if they get all stressed. They do, believe it or not.
Okay, no, I'm with you.
And you mean, but the bees, we stopped all the injuries as a result of dealing with the mental health of the bees. To be able to, they didn't want interest in food. It was getting that water, and they would all line up around the pot. It was a little sort of pot of water. It didn't need much, but all bees around it. And every site you went to, everybody, and they worked in harmony. Everybody coexisted at the canteen. The bees had where they went to, and they would all take the water, and they would go away, and they would go back to the hive.
Amazing. What a great start. I mean, I love bees, and that whole kind of hive mentality is really cool. It's something we think about a lot with the FormScore in terms of the circles of support that we put in. But I just love that idea of something very simple, looking after the health of our bees, that then enables a little bit of harmony. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. So yeah, thank you for sharing that one. So I think I can guess your answer on the next one, Karl. But if mental health were a color, what would it be?
Oh, right. Okay. So red. It's got to be at the minute. For those of you that maybe are hearing this and not seeing it, I have got my Welsh jersey on at the minute. It was the first thing that fell out the wardrobe this morning. You know, because I was thinking, who am I on with today? And I thought, oh, Rob. All right, okay. I'm sure Rob saw the result of the weekend.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? So, and I know he's got his FormScore background that goes red if he's feeling a bit less than good about things.
What you mean that one? You mean that one?
Can't, if I say too much about the rugby, he's going to turn to the red. So, but yeah, I think you know, I always, when you talk about mental health, in my head, I think mental fitness. And, you know, when I look at, you know, resilience and things that are a big part of how we manage our mental fitness, you know, we take the knocks, the daily knocks of life, you know, and work. We take those all the time. And our resilience comes from the strength, etc., of what we our experience and what we do. But in terms of, you know, red would be mine, because obviously it signifies where I'm from. You mean something I'm passionate about, and the fire in my belly to make a real difference.
I love that, the fire in your belly to make a difference. That's a really good way of thinking of it, igniting that fire. I love it, and we're going to talk about that passion in a second. So, if mental health were a food, Karl, what would it be?
All right, okay. I'd have to go towards something. I'm a Taurus, right? So my daughter is very much, she's 16 now next month. And she's very much into the star signs. And she says, Dad, you always know you're a Taurus because of the way you go about the fridge. And you mean, so to you know, if I was to, it would have to be pizza. Because, you know, I think it's, you know, first of all, pizza does a number of things, right?
Yep.
I mean, it is a food, but it's much more than that. There's lots of ingredients that come together to make a pizza.
Yep.
And in mental health, there's lots of things that come together, right? Now I'm working off the cuff here,
yep.
but also it brings my family together on a Friday night because we have a Domino's.
Yep.
Yeah. So I love nothing else than when we all get excited about something that's just, we can have anything to eat, but we get excited about pizza night.
Yeah.
And finally, it makes me feel good because I'm a Taurus and I love eating.
Yeah.
Now I have to exercise a lot to be able to counteract that. Otherwise, I went into when I started vaccinating. I'm working at the centre after qualifying. I went to put on my suit trousers, right? Because I worked for St. John's then, innit,
yep.
as a volunteer. And one of the things, the uniform is they sent out the T-shirts and my top half's kind of okay, it hasn't changed very much,
yep.
And when I went to put my trousers on, though, I couldn't get them on, Rob. And I was like, oh my God. And so I had to buy the next size up. And for the girls who might know, it's 30, 32, 34, 36. Guys go up in twos.
Yeah.
So I had to buy an extra couple of inches to be able to. So that kind of gave me a kickstart into, back into the physical activity side as well.
Well, yeah,
pizza, Rob. There you go.
Pizza. I'm with you on both of those things because my inability to exercise has caused an expansion of my waistline as well, Karl, and I'm looking forward to getting back on my bike to address that. But I think the pizza's a brilliant one, and I love that idea of bringing the family together because we have Friday night pizza as well, and I really look forward to it.
Yeah.
So I like that one. So if mental health were a song, what would it be?
Right. My default quickfire answer is Bread of Heaven.
Yeah.
Just because I like your background. By the end of this, is going to turn 10 out of 10 red.
Yeah.
Or I'll put mine up.
Yes.
No, again, I love. Right. Okay. So there's a bit of background to this actually. When I start thinking about it on the cuff again. So in Wales, right, some of the best singers were always the bad boys. And the reason for that, right, is in Wales, the punishment was to go and do the choir. And when I was growing up, a naughty young Welsh lad, as most of us were, mischievous more than anything.
Yeah.
So I ended up in the choir, right, because you had to do it at lunchtime, so choir practice. And then obviously, so there was like lots of boys in the choir. That's why the Welsh Male Voice Choir and everything, they're so good because it was instrumental in Wales. You played rugby and you sang in the choir.
Yeah.
And often, I played rugby in the school and, and later in the military. But, I was also a good singer because I was in the choir, so that's what you get. You get these big burly lads who are great singers and as well because they've grown up in the choirs. So,
Brilliant.
Bread of Heaven because of the choir.
I love that concept, of a slightly mischievous lad that gets sent off to the choir, and then there's this amazing bunch of singers that come out as a result. Excellent, great choice. Final one on the quickfire round. If mental health were a sound, what sound would it be?
Silence.
I love it. Why silence?
Definitely, because I think it's those moments where you are reflecting that really are the times where you learn the most. A lot of people learn through speaking, right? I'm a great believer, take this quick fire round, yeah? You're thinking so many things, thoughts going through your head, and at that moment you're creating as you are speaking, right?
Yeah.
So that was me in creativity mode. And I do bounce off that with the team, but you always need that time to step away, reflect what is happening. And I in the moments where you are, I'm not about sleeping, but the moments where you take that time to reflect, and often we don't do enough of that.
Yeah.
And I think, because we're always busy in our thoughts nowadays about something, but this is why mindfulness took off, right? So because it's concentrating on one thing and one thing only.
Yeah.
And I like when I get a chance to reflect and really start to. And it helps my mental health when I'm thinking about, right, what do I need to do? So I'm looking at maybe writing an article, or I'm looking at doing a topic, or I'm creating, and after I have the surge of discussions with the team and emotions, I like to then come back and just sit and start to think and reflect. So the sound of silence would be my sound.
I think that's a really interesting answer. And you're right, I agree with you. And there's a few things that spring to mind there. One, I talk a lot about the gift of self-reflection with respect to answering that question, how are you today? What's driving it for you? Are you balancing stress? Have you slept well? Have you exercised? What are your connections like? But it all starts with that moment of giving yourself some space to think about it, because then you can work out what's driving it. But the other bit that sprung to mind when you were talking there was the way we've been working through the pandemic is limiting that silence, limiting that reflective time in certain cases, because we're going from one Zoom or Teams call to the next one with very few breaks, with very, very little space. And I think interesting to hear your perspectives on this in terms of how we counteract that in the workplace. But have you noticed that that's the way a lot of people have been working and those issues have been coming up?
It is, yeah. I think when I reflect on the pandemic over the last year, coronavirus has made working from home socially acceptable. And that's a huge step forward in a positive way. Many of the tech companies in Silicon Valley started a movement around this a number of years ago. But big business, industrial business, struggled with the concept. Certainly old school leaders struggled with the concept of how could people possibly be still working if they're at home, right? And what was happening was, people didn't go into, they could work from home. They had the technology to do it, but they felt the need to be at the table because the perception of others just thinking, and their boss just thinking, well, where are they? They're not here. They're sat at home. They must be chilling out with the family or the dogs or doing something else other than work. And the reality is this has really fast forwarded our evolution as a species towards a much more acceptable form of not being on the road all the time and not being in the office for no reason just to attend meetings, because the corporate world has developed into a meeting society. And lots of companies have tried to break that philosophy within their business and failed miserably and struggled with it. And this has fast forwarded us to be able to do that. And I think making it socially acceptable. So now good leaders will be saying, to their teams that are around the table with them, why are you here? Why didn't you dial in? And great leaders wouldn't even be in the room themselves. And that's the difference, is the great leaders. So my team are all dying to meet up, right? Because we're a safety critical organization. We're key workers, right? And within Thames, and we're working all the time throughout the pandemic. And I go out to sites, to be able to do audits and speak to teams, etc. But I haven't met with my team collectively because I don't feel that it's essential to do that. And that resistance, in my view of great leadership, is that's not essential. Me going out on the sites to do certain audits is, and I only do the essential stuff because that's the government guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. And my hope is that as we come through this pandemic, we retain the good stuff about choice of how we work, and then we rebuild the levels of connections with our employees, and I guess help them with that self-discipline of how we work and making sure we get recovery time in the day, etc. We've got my little lad here. Do you want to go and watch the TV for a little bit? Yeah? Good man. And so we're now like 30 minutes into this, Karl, and I've not asked you a proper question because there's been so fascinating on what's come out of the quickfire round. But I wanted to ask you and really recognize the contribution you make, and you've recently received an OBE for those services to mental health. And we also recognised you as an ally to the cause as part of the InsideOut LeaderBoard, and delighted to be able to do that. But why are you so passionate about it? What is it that drives you to invest so much personal capital and time into helping create mentally healthier workplaces? And that's workplaces not just in your own, but far beyond. So what is it that drives you, Karl?
So I've my entire pretty much my entire life has been, my entire career has been dedicated to the preservation of life. The military is about prevention of death. You know, I mean, it's about preserving life as opposed to taking it. And most people think you go to shoot guns and shoot people, but in reality, we're sent into conflicts to protect those who are most vulnerable and innocent. And when I left the military after, serving 13 years and multiple conflicts as a soldier, moving into still doing a role that involved protecting people from injury and illness was a natural fit for me. And even though PTSD was around, obviously, has been around forever, really. And I saw a lot of it in the military as a result of the conflicts. But I also see a lot of it within business in not such a harrowing way, but also the impact of, poor leadership, poor management, and decisions that are made for people that don't really not with the best interests and not with the full understanding. And I've worked quite hard throughout my career to make sure that organizations that I'm in create a culture of care and one of understanding that actually allows people to thrive in the workplace. And I guess, if that's what drives me, I've naturally through my career, and certainly over the last 10 years in particular, as I've been in leadership positions, I've been able to then expand outwards onto things like, pro bono work that allow me to do a lot more in terms of influence in society and future of the workplace. So for instance, the mental health radio show that I run, I lecture at Cambridge University as well. So that's the Future Leaders. That's the School of Engineering on health, safety and security there. I'm a non-executive director on water and sanitation for the urban poor. These are some of the poorest cities in the world that we advise governments on and provide water and sanitation, which is a basic fundamental of life. If you talk about mental health, you can't get access to water. It certainly does affect everything. So there's lots of things that I do that have really allowed me to sustain my passion in helping people.
And I guess the fact that mental health and well-being is such a core part of what you're doing now is probably a testament to how important that is in terms of that preservation of life, or certainly maximizing quality of life opportunity. Have you seen that rise in terms of the importance of that over the last few years?
Yeah, I think as sports personalities, celebrities, royals have started speaking more openly about their mental health and challenges that they face, so too as society, and society is in business. So, any leader that's not thinking nowadays about cultural evolution of their organization, to be able to affect the behavior of people within their organization, because let's face it, culture is attitude, behavior is visible, you can see it. So that in turn has really manifested the visibility and profile across really society. I guess, organizations are really stepping up now, taking this far more seriously, and in turn, it is creating better working environments for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. And when we first met, I remember it was a conference we were both speaking at, and you were also showcasing your virtual reality training, which I was fortunate enough to have a look at, have a demo of, which was very powerful, from the first person perspective of somebody that is spiraling downwards with a mental health challenge, and ultimately how they got some support with an intervention at the end. But that was pretty innovative at the time, and still is really. And you do a whole bunch of stuff in Thames Water around really drilling into the impact and measurement of the things that you put in place for mental health and well-being. Can you give us a flavour of the sort of journey that you've been on and how you see that going forward?
Well, there's so many. We call them waves of initiatives that have been put in over many years that have affected the volume of illness. In the last 6-7 years at Thames, we've had circa a 90% reduction in illness as a result of work-induced illness from physical and psychological health. that comes as a result of the initiatives that have been created and developed to affect all manner of physical and psychological areas within us. But if I was to call out a few that have really made the big difference, I would say, first of all, from a leadership perspective, the education levels around the executive table and the leadership top 50 to 100 in any organization, that's the areas where you have to concentrate, because that's setting the tone for the company.
Yeah.
But the next thing is the ability to ask the right questions at the right time. And by that, I mean, most organizations still aren't asking the fundamental basic question when somebody goes off absent. Is it work or non-work related? Now, the ability to ask that question needs to come from culturally. Somebody will answer it as to how mature your organization is. If they fear reprisal, because maybe it's poor line management or it's harassment within the workplace or anything that's caused them to go off, and then they say, oh, I've just got a case of diarrhea or flu, or cold. You mean because they're masking the real issue? It's because the organization hasn't created an environment where people feel safe to be able to call out. But once they get to a point where they can ask that question, you see many organizations, injury has become acceptable to have an investigation. Anytime somebody's off work as a result of injury, there's an investigation, there's an executive review, and there's learning to prevent a recurrence.
Yeah.
Well, we should be doing the same, and we do in Thames the same thing for illness. If somebody goes off unwell with work-related illness, there needs to be an investigation, there needs to be an executive review, and there needs to be learning. Why? Because there's a legal and moral obligation to prevent a recurrence. You can't have somebody just sat at home and then coming back into the same environment where nothing's changed. Yet so many organizations are still allowing this to happen. So within Thames, that executive review, uncomfortable at the beginning, about 6 or 7 years ago, we put it in, very uncomfortable for the executives in the first one. Can we talk about it? Well, it's health. Can we talk about it? Well, of course you can. You need to have the conversation. How are you going to prevent a recurrence?
Yeah.
And we helped steer them through that journey. And now it's accepted that, the right conversations will be happening. That in turn has affected how seriously the organization takes it, because the leadership takes it seriously.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And you touched on psychological safety, and I guess that's what we're talking about here. It's people feeling psychologically safe enough to be able to be authentic and honest about what is driving that period off work. And then the organization has the information to do that review and to make change. And presumably that takes time to build up that level of trust with employees.
Definitely. You can't do everything overnight. Yeah. And one of the things that, that I've presented to many different organizations over the years is how to build a mental health framework, or let's say health and well-being framework that tackles physical and psychological health in your workplace, regardless of whether you're an SME or whether you're a large multinational organization. It's pretty much irrelevant. You are dealing with the same fundamentals. What are your suite of health performance indicators, we call them HPIs, that you need to monitor and measure? And how then do you tackle leadership, competency, engagement, communications? So that you're creating safe and healthy working environments through affecting the organizational psychology, through affecting the individuals that work and build up that organizational psychology.
Which, again, I can see why, and I would echo this in terms of the advice that I give to organizations, starting with that top-level leadership group and getting their buy-in to this journey is important, isn't it? Without
a shadow of a doubt. You have to, and it's for people like me within organizations that work with that executive team to be able to get them to a position where they have the competency levels, so the understanding, which enables them to have the confidence. Because if you affect competency, then you can affect confidence in their ability to have those conversations. People will not talk about a subject unless they feel confident they're not going to look silly. So if you were asking me now about, tax, because I know you used to work in tax, didn't you, Rob?
I did indeed.
If you started having a conversation with me now about that, I wouldn't be able to talk to you about it. I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about it because I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. In reality, You don't need to have people having a degree and having a really massive education about mental health. A finance director. I mean, my finance director at the minute, the CFO, he's great. He likes mindfulness, and he's invests in health and well-being across the company. Why? Because he understands it. Why does he understand it? Because we talk about it and we've worked within the company on it. And that's the bit. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to influence that understanding of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a human issue, and we can do that. I think there's a point around, you are in a very senior position in the organization, so you do have some influence. I think somebody who might be a well-being manager, and that's the sort of top level well-being person in an organization, might have a bit of a tougher job. But I think it still is putting that case forward, isn't it? And getting the buy-in from those that are potentially making the decisions on budget and comms and all the rest of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But also it's the connections. I always say to the organization, listen to the silent majority, not just the vocal minority. Because if we listen to the vocal minority, often, if I did that, I'd be listening to a select group of individuals that I engage with on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So things like your surveys give you the ability to then turn, if you're a wellbeing manager in a smaller organization, or the company's just starting out, get the survey done and ask the question. Does the organization take health and well-being seriously? Get the feedback. And then you're able to go, well, here's your ammunition for here's what I think we should do, but here's the reason why. And that's the bit. If you can get that reason why through that engagement survey feedback, then you're already opening the door to the investors and the purse string holders.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's good advice. Looking forward, next 12 months, what do you see in terms of any emerging risks and opportunities, I guess, as well, around the mental health and wellbeing agenda in the workplace?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked this. So I recently wrote an article, which I haven't published yet, about the emerging risks that we are seeing at the minute. And these are hidden risks that aren't being talked about effectively yet. So to give you an idea, one, for example, is the physical separation between the home and the workplace has diminished for so many of us. Now, for some of us, for example, me, when I'm working at home a little bit more than I would normally do at the minute, or for a permanent home worker that's in, say, a HR position or finance position, they will be dealing with their normal colleagues on the Zoom calls, and then they'll be getting a break and they'll be going to see the family. And there's not much change in that, okay? Mm-hmm. For somebody who's in a frontline facing, customer facing role, such as IT professional call center rep, a customer call center in utilities, electricity, gas, water, they generally are on the receiving end of negative customer calls because somebody's phoning up, not to say, well done for providing me with water or electricity this past month. It's generally a bill issue, or it's a supply issue, or something that's got them a little bit unhappy. Yeah. So those negative calls. Now, in between the breaks, normally they would either, if it was an uncomfortable conversation, they would put their hand up for the supervisor. Or if it was, they were going for a break and they've had a series of negative calls, they would have a chat with the line manager, or they would talk to one of their colleagues, a chance to let it out before they get back in the game with the headset back on. Yeah. And we have then the final real big separation barrier, which is that drive home, where you leave the work behind you, you get in the car, the radio's on, and then you're looking forward to what's coming next. Oh, I'm going to see the family. Oh, I'm going to see the dogs. Oh, I'm going to go through the door. And by the time you walk through that door, generally you're kind of in a different mode. You're saying, oh, here's my safe zone, my family, and things are refreshed. These individuals now are actually coming off those calls, in their break, take the headset off and going immediately confronted to the family. And the family see not the fun mummy or daddy coming in through the door after a day at work, a little bit tired, but chuffed to see them, happy, lighting up the room. They see the negative chronic effects of long-term working from home in negative environments. Yeah. So I think organizations need to start thinking about how they actually deal with those in frontline customer call center roles at home, facing bombardment of negative calls, and how that's immediately impacting longer term on the family that see them directly and immediately.
Yeah.
Makes sense, Rob?
It does indeed. And you know, we talk a lot about using that commute time that we don't have anymore to actually put a buffer in between home and work. And it could be just as simple as just going for a 10-minute walk, couldn't it? Because you have a boundary, you have a buffer, you can decompress, you can process a little bit. But you're right. I think we do need to find the way to create those touch points for people that are dealing with negative things as part of their job. Because that would be just that conversation with a colleague, with a supervisor, with whoever, just to offer a bit of support. Whereas that can just build and build up if you're just face the screen all day, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think, what do I call it at the minute? You know, because you can't call it dealing with the negative calls, you know, but somehow we need to brand it to be able to show people, that's you've got this, we've got this in our company.
Yeah.
And often I find if you brand things, then people can, right, it's this.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it is. I know what I've got, you know?
Yeah. I'll give that a bit of thought, and I'll
we won't call it Simon's syndrome, you know, but generally, if we brand it, then people can latch on and say, how are we tackling this?
Yeah.
You know, for our high profile negative call receiving individuals, we need to do this.
Yeah, because it's then a thing, it's a known thing, and then you apply it to the own. Yeah, absolutely. Let's work out what that is. Answers on a postcard, please, everyone listening in. So we're coming to the end of our time, and this time just goes through so quickly, chatting to you, Karl. I just wanted to talk about the OBE. How did that feel to be recognised for the work you do?
Oh, God. Very humbling, Rob, very overwhelming, and a bit unreal, if I'm honest. So, you know, when and it was a bit of disbelief as well, because normally it would arrive in a very official letter, I found out afterwards, but I got an email off a NY21 email inbox, and I thought, what's this? And I opened it, and my immediate kind of rush of emotion to say, what? You are kidding, I can't believe this. And then it was disbelief. So it was like, nah, this is a joke. You know, why would they send me an email? So there was a lovely letter inside the email, but, you know, I thought, so I phoned the number on the letter, and I got through to the cabinet office and to the honours section. And you know, they said, oh yeah, congratulations, you've won, you know, you've been awarded, recommended by the Prime Minister to the Queen. And, you know, if the Queen says yes, then you'll be officially appointed. And I said, right, okay, all right. So the next day I woke up and I phoned a different number to the central office and asked to be put through to the honours section.
Yeah.
And when I, you know, because I still didn't believe it, like, so when I got put through, it was the same girl on the phone. Oh, hi, Karl. Hi, yeah. It's still real.
It's still real.
Oh no. And then I wanted to get somebody else just to verify it. I didn't want to ask her. I'm sure I phoned up again the following week. It was awful, but it was all because it's not, you know, no matter how, nobody doing this job thinks they're important. I certainly don't. You know, you get out of bed and go to work and do your best every day. And, you know, Anton Deck have OBs and people in David Walliams. And that's why even my kids were like, really? How go Anton Deck have OB? Who are you? You know, so it was like, you know, really funny in the house as well. You know, but everybody's really, you know, really chuffed. And the worst thing was they said, you can't say anything.
Yeah.
You can't tell your mum. And I was like, what? On the phone? What do you mean I can't tell my mum? And they're like, you can't. You're not allowed until the embargo was up until the 31st. So I was on the phone telling my dad several hours before the announcement, and I got told 2 weeks in advance. You know, because you have to play the game, and they said, you know, you can't tell your family members.
Yeah,
really?
Of course. But I can totally relate to that email coming through, and you'd think, well, this wouldn't normally be an email, surely, and you just question it, right? Yeah. But congratulations, you know, it's well deserved for all you do, and great to see your work recognised in that way. One more question for you. I'm trying to curate and collect some golden nuggets for wellbeing. And so I've decided to start asking my guests on this show, what is your one well-being nugget, the one thing that you could share that is good for managing your well-being and others could grab onto?
I think if you're talking about, I would split it into two, Rob. For the workplace, I would always say it's not the physical or psychological issue a person may face that prevents them thriving at work. It's the environment in which they are placed. Yeah. So that covers so many things. I chair the disability group within Thames Water, and that deals with senses, sight, sound, physical ailments, and we have representatives across the company. And it's all about listening and what steps we can take. But again, it's not their disability that prevents them thriving at work. They can overcome that. It's the environment in which they place, and good companies recognize that. From a personal perspective, I would say, it's got to be self, family, and friends in that order. If you don't look after yourself, physically and psychologically, emotionally, then, you're already letting your family down anyway. The family are there as a support framework and a massive part of my life. But I know first and foremost, I've got to keep myself fit because I like eating. I've got to do exercise. And it may sound very, exercise, yeah. I've got to do exercise. I've got to control what I eat because I'm in my late 40s now, and I can't fit in my clothes too well anymore. But, And but in doing so, healthy body, healthy mind. As an ex-military guy, I didn't used to worry about it so much because the army just drilled it into you. 3 squares a day and work out. But it's so true. So I think if you deal with yourself first and you set time aside and you do things that you like and enjoy, as well as things that you need to do, there's some stuff we need to do, like not eat too much, etc. But then the family, that allows you then the catalyst to get yourself right and say, right, family. For me, that's so important. And then friends, right? At the minute, we've become a little bit lazy in terms of reaching out to our friends. And I watch my daughter and I'm in awe of my daughter, the way she deals with her friendship group at the minute. They're on calls every night and they do all sorts of things. They're playing Minecraft on a call and then they're doing something else. Then they'll have but they're always working hard to come up with new ideas to connect with their friends. And I think the adults, we've become lazy and we could take a few lessons from our younger generation who are brilliant at connecting electronically with their friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love both of those, and I think they're great nuggets. And you're right, we could work a bit harder at keeping in touch with our friends. The FormScore app is what we're trying to do to help notice when a friend might need a check-in. So for anybody that wants to check that out, please do have a look. Karl, you've been such a good guest. I could talk to you for hours on this. Thank you for joining us. You're actually my first man as well. This is episode number 8, and you are the first man. I was saving that slot for you, so
very privileged.
Thank you for representing our gender. So next up on the form guide we have another man, which is Andrew Tarver, who is CEO of Jigsaw XYZ, and Tarver and I are going to talk about bipolar in advance of World Bipolar Week. So that's going to be 9 a.m. next week. So please do listen in then. And Karl, thank you so much.
Loved it, Rob. Thank you.